Morning. It's about almost 4 o'clock in the morning. Give it about another several more minutes. The news for this morning, actually several hours ago, all I kept hearing was the legend of Tiger Woods and a car accident. That's all I've been hearing about in the news. Something slipped past everybody in the business world that even some places actually talked about, but not really. Of course, they'll talk about that in the morning news locally here. But it shouldn't have been no surprise that this one was going under, and they just decided to pull the plug without notification on social media or any other media. Fry Electronics. Somebody ought to be keeping track of how many retail chains have gone under, not just besides the COVID-19, but because of other economic factors that managed to kill off another icon that struggled for its identities for years, and not to mention the management company at this point over here. I mean, come on. They struggled with falling sales and trying to find different ways to raise revenue, and they couldn't. So Fry Electronics is one of those specialty kooky retail chains that offered electronics, gimcracks, music, videos, office chairs, twice. Gone. Completely shut down. The remaining stores from California, which was about several of them out here, and all the way through Texas. Twitter, quiet, shut down. Facebook, gone. I mean, these guys pulled the plug. I know there was one store 20, 30 years ago, actually. Longer than that. So we had to shut down right after the 94 earthquake. Actually, it shut down before the 94 earthquake when I was living in the area. There was a little store called Danish American Farms, a local retail store in an area of what it was called North Hills at the time. And it was on Devonshire and Woodley. It was a hell of a market to go to, besides going to the major chain of Vaughn's. This one had specialty stuff. Not to mention regular food, different prices. Comparable, if not less, than Vaughn's, but somehow or another. Then one night, they decided, management, to skip town. They shut down things. I used to live in the neighborhood. It was between, what the hell was it, 88 through 92. And I had noticed a lot of people loved the store. They talked about this one. But they still had Albertsons to deal with in the neighborhood. But even that, they were holding their own. They had a strong customer base, and it was a family store. Employees treated each other like their family members. It was a nice place to go shopping in. My family would peruse it every once in a while we lived in the area. Most of the time we hit the Vaughn's because it was Vaughn's. It was closer to the home. But we just wanted to get that experience at different shops. You had to go into a different store to see what was going on. And that's what we did. It's like walking into Gelson's, except not quite Gelson's. And then one day, they were shut down. No notification from the city of Los Angeles. No notification from the county of Los Angeles. They just closed the store and the management ran. Took all the money, all the funds, everything else made it operational. Employees were gathered around all over the damn place trying to figure out what the hell happened. Customers couldn't figure out what the hell happened. There was a hell of a lot of speculation going on. Even the reporters couldn't even get a good answer. Management just disappeared, flat up. Kind of reminds me of the situation with Fry's Electronics at this point over here. Management just decided to say, screw it. Now, I know that COVID-19 has been bottling up left and right, killing off retail left and right. In the past 15 years, 20 years, within that time period, we had another recession here that was harming a lot of chains, and they had to reinvent themselves left and right. Some actually did fall back. It made online shopping more and more prevalent out there. Amazon took over. Walmart got threatened by it, so now they reared their heads as well and said, we're going to try doing more. And the major retail giants out there also tried to compete against the almighty Amazon at this point. There isn't a phone out there I probably would guess that didn't have an Amazon app. I've got an Amazon app. I've got Walmart on there too. Sorry, Target. It wasn't exactly comfortable. But I did shop at Target every once in a while. A long time ago, I did used to work for Target. And then later in my adult life, the last job I actually had, besides being a caregiver, was working at Walmart, before I nearly got killed in there. Literally. What drove me crazy is our technology was going faster than what our retail outlets can actually compete against. And one company was taking on a challenge left and right by building up its distribution networks left and right. Big, huge areas. Buy up large tracts land, build a huge infrastructure in there, get the trucks going, get individual trucks going for the deliveries. If they can't do it through the U.S. Postal Service, they'll do it with their own delivery service, and they did. COVID had managed to make these guys adaptable left and right. You can't fault the CEO for this one, for being a shrewd guy, which put the other guys out of business. Basically, I assumed that this is what happened to Fry's because management in there wasn't keeping up and keeping track of all the times necessary to keep their company afloat. Their stores were individually decorated inside and out to make them distinctive from each place, not a generic, but more kid-friendly maybe, or quirky. One place out in Burbank, California had science fiction. Another one actually had Alice in Wonderland or a jungle thing. I always liked having a flying saucer in the front of the store all the time. That'd be the science fiction stuff for me. Never visited. But I visited the Woodland Hills when it was still in operation for a decade or two. And I liked the place. Sometimes the customer service needed working on, but they worked on it. And sometimes the computers, even rebuilt ones, well, they did a bit better. And everything else was fine. Specialty electronics, the toys that they had, an Apollo set that I bought from there at one time. An Apollo landing set, the Apollo landing spacecraft with the capsule and the service module, the little astronauts, and a lunar lander that you had on a plastic sheet of the lunar surface with little tiny flags. And you could pretend that you're landing on the moon and then blasting off by taking off the damn top. You had to be very careful, very delicate. It was very small. very specific in its details, very detail-oriented. But it did hold imagination for those who wanted space travel. Things got fallen away on the wayside, unfortunately. Electronic gamers. They have control systems. Can't find the ones that don't want any more these days without chopping off a limb or two. Music, DVDs, movies, game cracks, light-up pens, promotional pens that you would see in plastic containers right at the registers or just about. You wanted to get pens for Christmas that light up in different colors, place to go to. Click on the pen and you see the brightly colored lights coming out of it. I remember when I had gotten a promotional pen from the company I used to work at one time. And it had a blue light every time you kept pushing down the tip of the pen on paper. It would light up like crazy. Same thing with some of these Kim Cracks I've seen. I wanted to get me more of those Kim Cracks because I thought they're fun and neat. I like fun and neat things. I'm going to have to find that stuff, unfortunately, on either eBay or, God forbid, Amazon. Because these days now, you're going to have to find more and more stuff like that. They're gobbling up left and right. But the one thing I know about mega corporations like this, they don't last forever. I mean, sure, they're gobbling up marketplaces left and right, trying to expand their empire. But there's only so much they can gobble up before they get either gobbled up or something happens to their girth, and then they get whittled down to size into nothingness. Now, the major chain that surprised the hell out of me when I heard about it yesterday, it's been out there for over 100 years, I think. Macy's? Wow. These guys survive a quarter with millions. You don't think that's an accomplishment. I do. This COVID nightmare we've got going on right now, excuse me one quick second. Sorry about that. It had to be cleared out a little bit there. Morning junk. So, Macy's, another company I used to work for back in so many years ago. Department store at Northridge Mall, Northridge, California. Well, after the '94 quake, like 2.5 years of renovation at the mall. I know they renovated for about a year and a half, but they had to rebuild the whole damn thing. Try to make it structurally sound so it will stand another earthquake. It still kind of reminded me of the same place, a little slightly different architecture, but still. Well, let's see what happens. A lot of stores lost their business after the 1994 earthquake. The Macy's became one of those anchor chains out there. They closed down their stores, at least not out here in the Southland. At least not all of them anyway. There were still a few major ones. And they still kept an online presence. But it was one thing to walk into a Macy's store, like any other kind of retail store. When you're working in a place that long, you kind of get the feel of it, whether or not this place is going to last long. I mean, these guys were hosting the Thanksgiving Day Parade every year in New York. So if you were a Macy's employee, even a formal one, you could feel a little bit of pride in that one. And because of the COVID-19 kicking the shit out of every one of us, including companies like that, they had to scale back operations. But them making a profit? Wow. And still struggling, like everybody else who hasn't been. Amazon's been eating things up left and right, but Macy's? Struggling and still making a profit. And yet Fry's with its mismanagement at that point, and they've had stories and these stories and social posts about it that corporate wasn't doing whatever it could to keep it alive. So they decided, pull the plug, run, hide. Don't face public scrutiny. Never mind if he actually had a fan base or if he actually had a solid customer base. He just lost the damn thing. But I guess for years they've been losing that too. So they decided to do a mercy killing on it. Why am I focused on Fry Electronics? It's one of those places that I miss seeing, like Radio Shack. Radio Shack, last time I heard, was under as well. They have an online presence. Hardly any stores open, brick and mortars. And when I knew this story, this store chain, it was managed by the Tandy Corporation. And this place was open for years. If you wanted your electronic components, a replacement component, this was the place to go to. Small retail, commission-based with the salespeople, but still. If you wanted to get a good CB, you go over to this place, or else you go to a truck stop and find another one over there. If you wanted radios, scanners, bracket mounts for your antennas, if you wanted a different special computer that you would like better than the other major chains and the major things that you've seen, but you wanted something a little bit more intricate, get those too. Even a few knockoff electronic toys that you had better luck with instead of the major corporations. I mean, it was just a place to go to when you needed parts. They almost practically disappeared out of the lexicon. It was out there for decades. Sign of the times, sign of the COVID. You have the major chains out there trying to supply, but they're not much. When you have the internet out there trying to do the international for the replacement parts, they did get replacement parts from the international. Tried to keep the prices down. Gone on the wayside. I guess this is a wake, I should say. A memorial for those places. A dirge to be played without the music. I'm waiting for the time. And it probably won't happen in my lifetime. Probably won't. We had already forecasted back in the 60s, and maybe earlier than that, about matter replicators. Items of simple bases to complicated bases being replicated through other forms of matter. These days, we've got 3D printers. Almost. You take an image of one item and map it out. And then you can get this computer, build things up with it. Pretty shortly, you've got this mold made out of a printer. Amazing. Things been out for being tested, but now about 2 or 3 years, more and more of it's coming out. I'm like, wow. I heard of 3D printing, but I've just never seen it in action. When I saw it in action, I'm like, so pretty shortly, in about 100 years, I probably won't live that long, but a matter replicator, I can put an order into the computer. Instead of a 3D map, a new pair of glasses would come out. It's better than these. I wouldn't have to go to a store. Go to the machine and get it. That put every one of those major corporations out of business. Every mom and pop out there. Once we start getting the matter replicators, Replimats, ooh. For some people who actually deal with the organics and actually deal with the actual food sources, they would have competition regarding synthetic being made out of our own waste or other matter, turn into whatever we wanted in the first place. The realm of the science fiction of Star Trek is still being made right in front of our eyes. Unfortunately, this is what they call progress. If you wanted to keep things simple, why don't we just revert it back to caveman days where we're trying to kill each other and stay in tribes and try to survive? No, we have to have computers. We have to have social media. We have to have mechanisms. We have to have gadgets. We have to have remote controls for our televisions, our flat screens, our streaming services. Streaming services that computers are used with. Or televisions, for that matter. Or viewing mechanisms, or whatever they would call it these days. The age of retail is dying. Right in front of our eyes. I was sorry when the 5 and dime retail places like Newberry and Woolworths passed on. There was one shop that tried to keep the flavor and feel, and it's out in Bakersfield, of what the lunch counter of Woolworths was all about. And the 5 and dime atmosphere it has, but it still kept the lunch counter. A little magic about that. 50 years ago. 5 and dime place. You see all these gift cracks around. Sewing kits that you needed. Materials that you would have to have. Little gift crack toys or something. Jewelry. One second. Sorry about that. I really did not want to be disgusting online. Yeah, sorry about that. But your family would be taken over to these stores because your mother or your father or both would want something, would need to get something, something that you probably would need. Maybe even a repairing sewing kit that they would have to get. More thread for something. Of course, you also had other places like Yarn Mart. And knitting was a big thing as well. Always was. Sweaters and socks and caps and other things. Itchy and thick as hell. But they kept you warm. Not fashionable, but it kept you warm. It depended on the whims of your knitters in the family. But the lunch counter was the thing. You'd get the hunger, and you'd wait for the store to open up. You move past the bins. You move past the shelves until you get to the side of the building, the side of the store, and there you smelled it. Actually, you could have smelled it from all the way through the store anyway. The smell of grease on a griddle. Coffee brewing, and smells of pie, French fries and hamburgers and hot dogs, grilled cheese, chicken tenders. coffee. Lots and lots of coffee. Floats of all sorts. And you'd have a very knowledgeable, friendly waitress or waiter who'd been in the business for a long while. You go into the store long enough, they know you by name. They know you by face. They know you and your family, because your family would be talking to them left and right. As a young kid, me and my brother had to find a cubicle at the Woolworths in North Hollywood. Valley Village, they called it. Valley Center, actually. So Laurel Canyon and Victory. In the same shopping center where the Funk Sears used to be. In that area, they had a lot of restaurants, including Shaber's Cafeteria. You wanted cheap food, you'd eat over there. Not bad prices and not bad food. And all the retirees and the seniors would gather there all the time. They would gather in that place to eat and schmooze with each other. Swap stories. But if you're working stiff and you wanted to get a fast burger, it wasn't the place for it. No, you get over at Woolworths. You get a lunch counter. You go along the lunch counter, you sit on small stools. And then you're at the counter. You got this long-ass metal table here. And you tell the waitress what's going on. And you don't see another cook there. Well, maybe somebody else cooking this stuff. But the waitress did all the work. Maybe 2 or 3. Because they would have about 30 or 40 people that have to attend. And they have to remember the orders, what was going on. How did they do that? They did it because they had good, sharp memories during that time. They did it. They wrote it down. They stuck them on these metal clips of what the orders were. Sometimes they had to ask, because it got so busy that they couldn't even remember what was going on. But even on the side of the buildings, there are certain areas that they would actually have cubicles for the family to stay in. If the families couldn't stay at the countertop, they'd have a cubicle. And you'd be a little more intimate, or more convenient trying to keep 2 kids in line and keep watching them so they don't go all over the place and get lost in the store. You had to keep your eye on the kids all the time. But that's what happened back in the Woolworths time. Growing up in North Hollywood, growing up in San Fernando as a kid. Every once in a while, I'd be going over to Shaber's for a bite to eat sometimes. Other times, to be Woolworths until they shut the place down. And it was pretty damn sad when they shut down Shaber's. And even worse is when you start seeing and hearing about Sears shutting down left and right, and then the store goes up in smoke. Major installation like that, closing down stores left and right. Oh my God, I couldn't even deal with that. I couldn't. Not really. I gotta get my glasses back on. So, right now they've got the news, and we'll see if they've got any more information concerning about probably Tiger Woods, or they've probably got information about Fry's, but that's what I want to hear. But I just needed to get this off my chest this morning, so we'll wrap later.